So hello and welcome everyone to the daily news analysis of today, that is 2nd of September 2023। तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं आज की हेडलाइंस ऑफ द हिंदू न्यूज़पेपर। तो पहला इम्पोर्टेंट जो आर्टिकल है वो है गांधी दर्शन गेट से प्लेस लिफ्ट प्रेसिडेंट टू अनवेल स्टेटस ऑन सितंबर 4, पेज नंबर 3 में। सेकेंड इम्पोर्टेंट है Assam's unsung hero rediscovered on the stage। ये पेज नंबर 4 का आर्टिकल है। देन India's first solar observatory mission to be launched today, that is Aditya L1 is going to launch today। पेज नंबर 6 का आर्टिकल है। देन यूरोपियन एजेंसी टू सपोर्ट आदित्य L1, ये भी पेज का है ये। देन अल्टरिंग स्टेटस क्यू, एडिटोरियल का सेक्शन, ये वाला एडिटोरियल। Then China's economic slowdown, it's a ripple effect, an uneven rebound, Then NPS withdrawal option set to be eased, says PFRDA। Then ninth का है 7 years on, mission to clean the Ganga remain a work in progress। 7 year हो गया, अभी तक वर्क इन प्रोग्रेस ही चल रहा है। नमामि गंगे और वगैरह वगैरह जो भी जितने सारे प्लान्स हुए हैं। Then NCERT given deemed to be university tagged, NCERT given deemed to be university tagged, says प्रधान। पेज नंबर 12 का आर्टिकल है। 11th का जो है चिल्ड्रन फ्रॉम वर्ड मैरिज इज एंटाइटल्ड टू पेरेंट्स शेयर इन प्रॉपर्टी, सेज सुप्रीम कोर्ट। देन नेक्स्ट लास्ट जो आर्टिकल है Thailand king reduces former PM Thaksin's prison term to 1 year, पेज नंबर 14। तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं वन बाय वन। पहला जो है गांधी दर्शन गेट्स ए फेसलिफ्ट प्रेसिडेंट टू अनवेल स्टेटस ऑन September 4। President Draupadi Murmu will inaugurate a 12-foot statue of Mahatma Gandhi and a Gandhi Batika or garden near Rajghat on September 4 at a function to celebrate the 75 year of India's independence and its G20 presidency। Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti Vice Chairperson Vijay Goyal said on Friday. The statue and the garden are located on the premises of Gandhi Darshan. He said a selfie point has also been created for visitors at the garden, which will have multiple statues of Mahatma Gandhi. Artist from Jaipur. Sculptured by artists from Jaipur, the statue shows him in various poses. Mr. Goyal said that the entire Gandhi Darshan complex is undergoing renovation due to the damage caused by the recent floods. The renovation work is expected to be completed within 2 months. The next जो important article है वो है Assam's unsung hero rediscovered on stage. Mongri Orang was shot by the British in 1921 for leading a fight against foreign liquor opium. More than a century after she was shot in Assam's Darang district for leading a fight against foreign liquor and opium, an unsung tea plantation worker has been rediscovered on stage. On August 29, the Northeast Regional Centre (NERC) of the Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts staged Malati Mem, a multilingual play based on the life and revolutionary zeal of Mangri Orang, an Adivasi with roots in central India. Fellow plantation workers used to call her Malati Mem, the second word being shorter from the Mem Sahib. The play, directed by Puri Saranya, an alumnus of the National School of Drama's Sikkim campus, and scripted by Pranab Kumar Burman, was held at the Madhav Deva International Auditorium in Guwahati. Mongri Orang is an unsung hero of India's struggle for freedom from British rule. She was gunned down in 1921 for leading a fight against foreign liquor and opium pushed during the colonial period. Suresh Ranjan Gudka, the regional director of INGCA NERC, said on Friday, she is said to be the first female matriarch of the India's freedom movement. Icons of Northeast: The theatrical production and outcome of a month-long workshop was an initiative to showcase the life and contribution of the icons of the Northeast on the national stage. He said a team of 40 members took part in the production of the play. A preview show was also held at Nalbari Nalbari Natya Mandir, about 70 kilometers northeast of Guwahati, for feedback and suggestion on the content and treatment of the play. Next है India's first solar observatory mission to be launched today. Aditya L1 mission payload helped to understand the problem of coronal heating, coronal mass ejection, flare activities, the dynamics of spare weather, and the propagation of particles and fields. So, India's first observatory mission named Aditya L1 will be launched on board the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle (PSLV) from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota at 11:50 am on Saturday. On Friday, the Indian Space Research Organisation ISRO commenced the 23-hour 40-minute countdown for the launch of Aditya L1 mission. Approximately 63 minutes after liftoff, the satellite separation is expected to take place as the PSLV will launch the Aditya L1 spacecraft into a highly eccentric earthbound orbit at around 12:53 pm. This PSLV C-53 Aditya L1 mission can be counted as one of the longest missions involving ISRO's workhorse launch vehicle. However, the longest of the PSLV mission is still the 2016 PSLV C-35 mission, which was completed 2 hours 15 minutes and 33 seconds after liftoff. Following the launch, Aditya L1 will stay in earthbound orbit for 16 days, during which it will undergo 5 maneuvers to gain the necessary velocity for its long journey. Subsequently, Aditya L1 undergoes a Lagrangian one insertion maneuver, making the beginning of its 110-day trajectory to the destination, ISRO said. Aditya L1 will stay approximately 1.5 km away from the Earth, directed towards the Sun. This is about 1% of the distance between the Earth and the Sun. This is about 1% of the distance between the Earth and the Sun. The Aditya L1 payload are expected to provide crucial information to understand the problems of coronal heating, coronal mass ejection, pre-flare and flare activities and their characteristics, dynamics of space weather, propagation of particles and fields, etc. The satellite placed in the hollow orbit can continuously view the sun without any occultation or eclipses. तो ये सारे जो पॉइंट्स है ये लैग्रेंजियन पॉइंट्स है L1, L2, L3, L4 एंड L5. ये कौन है CR थे. तो L1 जो है ये वाला पॉइंट L1 है ना. तो यहाँ पर इसी जाके आदित्य L1 को प्लेस किया जाएगा. यहाँ से वो ऑब्जर्व करता रहेगा सन की कोरोनल पार्ट जो है उसे ऑब्जर्व करता रहेगा. जैसे कि दिया गया है कोरोनल मास, कोरोनल हिटिंग है ना, कोरोनल मास इजेक्शन, प्री फ्लेयर एंड फ्लेयर एक्टिविटीज एंड देयर कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स. यहाँ से वो ऑब्जर्व करके सेंड करता रहेगा. ये L1 है. फिर ये पीछे की तरफ L2 याद रख लीजिएगा. ये L1 है, फ्रंट मतलब इन बिटवीन में है, सन एंड अर्थ के बिटवीन में है L1 पॉइंट। देन पीछे वाला जो अपोजिट में है वो L2 है। देन नेक्स्ट जो सन के पीछे जो L3 है, ये L4, ये L5। बेसिकली ये है आपका जो क्या बोलते हैं अर्थ का ऑर्बिट। तो ये सारे पॉइंट उसी हिसाब से लिया गया है, L1, L2, L3, L4 एंड L5। So a contour plot of the effective potential due to gravity and the centrifugal forces of a two-day body system in a rotating frame of the reference. The arrows indicate the downhill gradient of potential around the 5 Lagrange points toward them, red, and away from them, blue. Continuously, the L4 and L5 points are high points of the potential. At the points themselves, these forces are balanced. तो दूसरा एक्टर में पीएसएलवी थोड़ा देख लेंगे फिर। पोलर सैटेलाइट लॉन्च व्हीकल, पीएसएलवी। पोलर सैटेलाइट लॉन्च व्हीकल, पीएसएलवी C-35 on the SDSC FLP. The Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle (PSLV) is an expendable medium-lift launch vehicle designed and operated by the Indian Space Research Organisation (ISRO). It was developed to allow India to launch its Indian Remote Sensing (IRS) Indian Remote Sensing satellites into Sun synchronous orbit, a service that was until the advent of the PSLV in 1993 only commercially available from Russia. PSLV can also launch small-size satellite into the geostationary transfer orbit (GTO). Some notable payloads launched by PSLV vehicles include India's first lunar probe Chandrayaan-1, India's first interplanetary mission Mars Orbiter mission Mangalyaan, and India's first space observatory AstroSat. PSLV has gained credibility as a leading provider of ride-share services for small satellites owing to its numerous multi-satellite development campaigns with auxiliary payloads using usually ride-sharing along with an Indian primary payload. As of June 2022, PSLV has launched the 345 foreign satellites from 36 countries. Most notable among these was the launch of a PSLV C-35 on 15th February 2017 successfully deployed 104 satellites in the Sun synchronous orbit, tripling the previous record held by Russia for the highest number of satellites sent to the space on a single launch. Until 24 January 2021, when SpaceX launched the Transporter-1 mission on the Falcon 9 rocket carrying 143 satellites into orbit. Payloads can be integrated and in tandem configuration employing a dual launch adapter. Smaller payloads are also placed on equipment deck and customized payload adapters. The next is a European agency to support Aditya L1. European agency to support Aditya L1. The European Space Agency (ESA), which had provided crucial support to ISRO to monitor the Chandrayaan-3's health, will also be supporting Aditya L1, providing deep space communication services to the mission. ESA's global network of deep space tracking stations and use of internationally recognized technical standards allows us to help our partners track, command and receive data from their spacecraft almost anywhere in the solar system, said Ramesh Chelathurai, ESA Service Manager and an ESA Cross-Support Liaison Officer for ISRO. Mr. Chelathurai added that for Aditya L1, mission, ESA is providing support from all three of its 35-meter deep space antennas over Australia, Spain, and Argentina, as well as support from the Kourou station in French Guiana and coordinated support from the Goonhilly Earth Station in UK. ESA said that it was the main provider of ground station service for Aditya L1. ESA stations will support the mission from beginning to end, from the critical launch and early orbit phase throughout the journey to L1, and then to send commands to and receive science data from Aditya L1 for multiple hours per day over the next 2 years of routine operation. The space agency added that from April to December 2022, ESA and ISRO teams had worked together intensively to evaluate ISRO's strategy for operating the Aditya L1. नेक्स्ट जो है अल्टरिंग स्टेटस क्यू, अल्टरिंग स्टेटस क्यू ये एडिटोरियल वाला पोर्शन है, देख लेते हैं. The center stand that it is unable to commit itself to a timeline for restoration of statehood for Jammu and Kashmir is quite disappointing. 4 years after the state's status was downgraded to that of a union territory, all that the union governments can say about it now is that the status as a union territory is temporary and that is taking steps towards making Jammu and Kashmir a complete state. When queried by the Supreme Court bench, which is hearing the uh, challenge to the abrogation of Jammu and Kashmir special status on under Article 370 the Constitution about a timeline for the return of statehood, the Solicitor General said he was unable to give an exact time period. It is true that the state had faced disturbances for decades, but whether it can still be cited as the reason for the delay in restoration of statehood is a relevant question to raise. Alongside the President's declaration of Article 372 inoperative and the application of the whole of the constitution to Jammu and Kashmir, the state was reorganized into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir with a legislative assembly and Ladakh without an assembly. The center favors holding of panchayat and municipal elections as well as polls to the assembly. The Election Commission of India and the state's election commission will have to take a call soon, as even the work of updating the electoral rules is said to be nearing completion. Given the government's claim that the situation is quite normal and that terrorism, infiltration, and incidents of stone throwing have all substantial come down, it is difficult to account for any further delay in the holding of election. However, the picture of normality portrayed by the government should not and is unlikely to influence the adjudications of the constitutional issues arising from the manner in which the abrogation of special status was achieved. As the Chief Justice of India, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, observed during the proceedings, the development work the government says it has undertaken after August 2019 is not relevant to the constitutional challenges. Any positive change brought about by the administration in the ground situation should be a pointer to the need for early election and the restoration of popular government as well as the statehood, and should not be used to demonstrate the correctness of the government's actions in 2019. To be fair, the hearing before a constitution bench, which has gone on for 14 days so far, has been quite rigorous in its focus on the constitutional and historical issues that will ultimately determine the validity of the manner in which the state's status was altered and its territory reorganized. So, from previous article, ये वाला जो दिया गया है आर्टिकल 370 ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिया थोड़ा देख लेते हैं. Article 370 of the Indian Constitution gave a special status to Jammu and Kashmir, a region located in the northern part of the Indian subcontinent and part of the larger region of the Kashmir, which has been the subject of a dispute between India, Pakistan, and China since 1947. Jammu and Kashmir was administered by India as a state from 17th November 1952 to 31 October 2019, and Article 370 conferred on it the power to have a separate constitution, a state flag, and autonomy of internal administration. Article 370 was drafted in Part XXI of the Indian Constitution titled Temporary Transitions and Special Provisions. It is stated that the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir would be empowered to recommend the extent to which the Indian Constitution would apply to the state. The state assembly could also abrogate the Article 370 altogether, in which case all of the Indian Constitution would have applied to the states. After the state constituent assembly was convened, it recommended the provisions of the Indian Constitution that should apply to the state, based on which 1954 presidential order was issued. Since the state constituent assembly dissolved itself without recommending the abrogation of Article 370. The article was deemed to have become a permanent feature of the Indian Constitution. On 5 August 2019, the Government of India issued a presidential order superseding superseding the 1954 order and making all the provisions of the Indian Constitution applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. The order was based on the resolution passed in both houses of the India's parliament with two-third majority. A further order on 6th August made all the clauses of Article 370 except Clause 1 to be inoperative. In addition, the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act 2019 was passed by the Parliament, enacting the division of the state of Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories, to be called Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Union Territory of Ladakh. The recognition took place on 31st October 2019. A total of 23 petitions were presented to the Supreme Court of India, challenging the central government's decision to abrogate Article 370 of the Constitution, which has constituted a five-judge bench for the same. Then next जो है China's economic slowdown, its ripple effect. The news about China's economic slowdown has caused mixed reaction. China for long had been worried about fears of a slowdown and a middle income trap. Now there are fears of deflation, which may bring bad news for China and the rest of the world. Thus, understanding the causes of the magnitude of the China's present day economic challenges is essential. Speaking at the People's Congress (NPS) in 2007, then Premier when Jiabao had cautioned that the biggest problem with China's economy is that the growth is unstable, unbalanced, uncoordinated, and unsustainable. It was expected that some form of some form of the course correction would be undertaken in the subsequent period. However, as the world experienced the global financial meltdown in 2008, China chose the strategy of investing in infrastructure that included railway, highways, and the energy and construction sector. It had swept the core problem of a lack of consumption, regional inequality, and a lack of social security under the carpet in order to sustain double-digit growth rate. Why it did was simple. The domestic legitimacy of the leadership in China has depended on creating prosperity and making it available to a greater number of citizens year on year. However, by the time Xi Jinping came to power, the steroid had run their course, and the weapon of period was worse off. Chinese financial markets suffered from lack of regulatory oversight, since loans to businesses were distributed on the basis of proximity, or the famous Chinese term Vansky, the nodal network based on factions, friendships, and relationships. In a new normal, the ground realities. When Mr. C says that China is the world's second largest economy, he is right, and he is also right when he says that China is the world's largest developing country. During the 19th and part of Congress, 19th Party Congress of Chinese Communist Party in 2017, Mr. Xi announced that from here on, the party would focus on quality of life issues as part of its growth strategy. Within this announcement, there was a recognition that people's expectation of the state had changed, but there was also an acceptance that the era of growth driven by exports, infrastructure spending and big ticket investment was over. China termed this an era of new normal where the country had to overcome the 2.5 decade long habit of enjoying more than 10% growth. The higher growth had translated into more jobs and greater disposal income. Now, with lower than usual rates, new jobs were hard to come by. China continues to add a significant number of the working age population as each new batch graduates. That is why unemployment numbers are soaring. It is also why the government is advising students to delay their graduation and to do extra courses. During the first term of Mr. C 2012 to 17, Export growth rates export growth rates had cooled dramatically, a hint that China's labor costs were rising due to wage increase and social insecurity investment. This was the consequences of the Foxconn suicide issues, which was seen as a political embarrassment and a social challenge. On the other hand, bad investment and easy credits availability have meant that sectors such as housing, energy, construction have got into the bad habit of overproducing far beyond the immediate projected demand. As a consequence, these sectors have been stocked with inventory without any demand. This has happened despite the early success of the supply side reform, which shut down many underperforming companies and regulated the commodities markets. A political choice. No other country have as much a political economy as China does. China's ability to overcome its economic challenge today also has to be the political choice. In December 2020, Mr. Xi used the term disorderly expansion of capital. While this term was not elaborated upon much either by Mr. Xi or by others, its timing of having appeared within a few weeks of the withdrawal of the Ant Group IPO was seen to be significant. Most scholars of China have doubted the Chinese economy's ability to be truly innovative, while the party wants to control what the capitalist can and cannot do. Having made the promise of allowing the markets play a greater role in the allocation of resources during the third plenum of the 18th Central Committee in 2013. Mr. Xi has rolled back many of the promises made then. It was hoped then that political interventions in loans and investment decisions would reduce. The government did not intervene when the stock market tumbled in 2015, forcing banks to acquire stake in slow-moving stock. It has tightened the convertibility of the RMB. The Chinese, who save more than 50% of their income, did not like their money was going to be locked in longer because of speculation by a few others, leading to a few protests. China has initiated several social security measures to counter this tendency of saving a huge proportion of income, but progress has been really slow. Also, policies such as common prosperity aimed at sharing the fruits of the progress better and dual circulations aimed at increasing domestic consumption and competitiveness of the domestic market and cutting down inter-provincial red tape. Having not succeeded to the level of leadership would have liked. There is a perception that China's serious slowdown began in 2015 but was held in control by government spending on the project such as on urbanization, the trade war between United States and China, and the policies such as de-risking and China Plus One that seeks alternate production destination for investment accelerated the process. Finally, China's zero-COVID policy may be considered as the last straw as far as the economy is concerned. Recent data from the second quarter of the year suggests that people and companies have become even more cash conscious and are holding on to their cash. It has been it has been hard to come out of the COVID-19 experience. Food supplies ran out even in the urban areas in some part of the country. For investors, there is a fear of an even bigger slump, thus making them wait for new bottom out level. On state enterprises, the state-owned enterprises or the SOEs have been another problem for the political leadership. Their assured contracts and political networks mean that they get away by political bargain and without changing their method of operation. They also provide social security to several hundreds thousands working and retired workers, which means that touching them is a politically sensitive issue. The Evergrande crisis the Evergrande crisis 2020-2023 exposed China's housing bubble. It was also a symptom of misregulation and path dependency, which may be considered as symptomatic of the ills that affect the Chinese economy in general. The fact that dependency may cause a crash landing has been feared for nearly a decade, and the leadership is also aware of it. The middle income trap has been another long-term concern, as well as China's desire to climb up the value chain. That is not just making things in China but also designing them may be a distant dream. It may also affect Mr. Xi's national target for 2030 and 2049. Even then, China's economy growing at an estimated rate of 5% would mean adding more value when compared to India's projected growth rate of 6.1% for 2023. Given the size difference for India, it may mean a cooling off of the prices of crude oil and other commodities such as cement and steel, for which in China has been a gigantic market. Further, economic instability would change China's perception of its rise and its risk appetite on the border is another important issue to watch. The next article is an uneven rebound. And uneven rebound. Inflation monsoon pose fresh risk even as residual stress linger in economy. India's economy, as measured by the gross domestic product (GDP) as well as the gross value added, grew 7.8% in the first quarter of the year. This is the highest GDP uptake in the fourth quarter, but slightly underwhelming relative to 8% growth estimated by the Reserve Bank of India. The central bank's 6.5% growth projection for 2023-24 factor in a decline in the optic rate in each of the subsequent quarters of this year, culminating at 5.7% in the final quarter. One will have to wait until October's meeting of the RBI's Monetary Policy Committee (MPC) to access how this math is reworked. Although the Chief Economic Advisor V. Anantha Nageswaran believes These GDP numbers do not signal any discomfort in hitting the 6.5% mark for the full year. India remains the fastest growing major economy by a comfortable margin, with China recording a 6.3% rise in the same quarter and facing a fresh slowdown. But the month ahead could prove to be more challenging, with global headwinds that have hit goods exports and manufacturing already, combining with the domestic pressures from the renewed spurt in the inflation and the likelihood of a weak monsoon playing truant with crop yield and farm incomes. Farm sector GVA maintained its growth pace to rise 3.5% in Q1, but may taper off thanks to the monsoon's tepid progress and the fear that low reservoir levels may also hurt the Rabi crop. The headline growth rates for the services sector were robust. Trade, hotel and transport rose 9.2%, but in absolute terms the employment-intensive segment remained 1.9% below pre-COVID-19 levels, indicating the recovery is still incomplete while the government has been asserting that the private investment cycle has finally taken off. The gross fixed capital formation trends indicate it is still government capital funding that is doing the heavy lifting. Manufacturing GVA grew for second successive quarter after 6 months of contraction, but only accelerated slightly from 4.5% to 4.7%, so a broader rebound in consumption demand is likely still awaited. Private consumption spending rose 6%, but economists believe this is still dominated by demand from high-income earners, depending on how long the current peak of spiked inflation, especially in food items, persisted demand from lower income segment would be dented afresh. A feeble recovery in rural demand could also come undone if farm income take a hit. Interventions to counter inflation, such as export curbs on rice and onions, will hurt growth and the external trade balance, while relief measures such as the 200 rupees cut in LPG cylinder price that may proliferate ahead of the general election also pose a risk to the fiscal math and growth. The next NPS withdrawal option said to be eased, says PFRDA. The state governments that have ost- ostensibly opted out the national pension system for their employees and have reverted to the old pension scheme continue to remit due contribution to NPS corpus. State government employees account for the largest chunk of the saving pool, which crossed 10 lakh crore on August 25, 14 years and 3 months after the NPS regulated by the Pension Fund and Regulatory Development Authority actively started managing the old age saving of government employees who joined service on or after January 1, 2004. The NPS, which was earlier referred to as the new pension scheme, now offers retirement schemes for the unorganized sector through the Atal Pension Yojana (APY), which has 4.94 crore members as 18.13 lakh formal sector employees. Apart from managing union and state government employees' retirement savings, the NPS has made pension accessible to all irrespective of their salaried status, and the journey from 5 lakh crore to 10 lakh crore in terms of assets under management has taken just 2 years and 10 months, said Deepak Mohanty, chairman of PFRDA, noting that the system now has almost 6.63 crore members. Nearly 53 lakh state government employees account for about 44% of the NPS corpus, while members who have joined on a voluntary basis stand at around 49 lakh, with saving worth 1.82 lakh crore rupees. 66 central public sector enterprises have lodged on to NPS, while public sector banks have enrolled over 5.2 lakh employees, the PFRDA said. While 46% of APY members are women, Mr. Mohanty said that this ratio is far lower than in the other NPS schemes around 27 to 28%. The PFRDA is ringing in two important changes to expand the options available to NPS member at the time of retirement, likely as early as next month. Mr. Mohanty said, presently on superannuations, members have to purchase an annuity with 40% of their accumulated retirement savings and withdraw the balance. Now we will also allow members to opt for a systemic withdrawal plan for 60% of the corpus, by which they can choose to receive a fixed sum from their savings on a quarterly, or half-yearly basis. This will be helpful for those who retire, say, during a bearish market and also help members continue to earn better returns in the NPS framework rather than look for alternative investment options. The PFRDA chief explained. Moreover, for the mandatory annuity purchases, members would be able to opt for a mix of schemes rather than a single scheme. Annuity products entail a fixed payout to investors after they invest a lump sum. Some schemes assure a return of capital to members next to kin after their demise, but offer lower regular incomes. We are enabling members to direct their annuity component to a variety of schemes and are waiting for the necessary technological changes to roll out this feature, he said. The next में जो है seven years on mission to clean Ganga remain a work in progress. Work in progress. Treatment plants capable of treating just to 20% of sewage spewing into the river set up so far. NMCG hopes to increase NMCG hopes to increase this to 33% by 2024 and 60% by 2026. The center says it will only build capacity for 7,000 MLD. States must set up the rest. Sorry. In the 7 years since the government unveiled its ambitious 20,000 crore national mission for clean Ganga, it has installed treatment plants capable of treating just 20% of the sewage estimated to be generated in the five major states that lie along the rivers. This is expected to increased to about 33% by 2024, according to the latest projections by senior officials in the NMCG. The treatment plants will be capable of treating 60% of the sewage by December 2026. These calculations are premised on sewage to the tune of 11,765 million liters per day being generated in five states: Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, and West Bengal. Through which the river courses. This figure derives from a report submitted to the National Green Tribunal earlier this year. The NMCG plans on setting up sewage treatment plants capable of treating about 7,000 mld of sewage by 2026. The states are expected to set up the remaining capacity both on their own and drawing on separate initiatives by other arms by union government. The main objective of the Namami Gange mission is to ensure that no untreated sewage flows into the river. The estimate of the 11,765 MLD is dynamic and also includes sewage that is generated within the state but which does not necessarily flow into the river. It also is not exact and is a projection based on the expected population trends. NMCG Director General G. Ashok Kumar told the Hindu other states are also working on their own in setting up plants and we work with them by our projections. If we are able to set up capacity worth 7,000 MLD, it should suffice for now to ensure no untreated sewage flows in the mainstream of the river. Picking up pace, projects to set up STPs and sewerage networks are at the heart of the Namami Ganga mission and the account for about 80% of the overall project outlay. As of July 2023, STPs capable of treating the 2,665 MLD have actually been commissioned and are now functional. From 2014, when the mission was first announced to 2021, only 8811 sorry, only 811 MLD of capacity was completed in the last financial year 2022-23. However, 1455 MLD capacity was completed. Several plants took time to be commissioned as there were problems with land acquisition. The detailed project reports which prescribe all the steps necessary to execute a project and the rules of agencies, center, state and the private contractors needed revision and said Mr. Kumar. States were under the impression that building treatment plants was entirely the center's responsibility. We had to work to correct that, and now most of the sanctioned projects are progressing well. He added, with 36, Uttarakhand has the highest number of plants that have been set up or upgraded in the case of older plants, followed by Uttar Pradesh 35 and West Bengal 11. Though NMCG is a 20,000 crore mission, the government has so far given in principle approval for project worth 37,396 crore of rupees, which only out of which only 14,745 crore has been released to the states for infrastructure work. As of June 2023, the river's water quality is now within prescribed limits of notified primary bathing water quality and NMCG fact sheet viewed by the Hindu noted. More dolphins. Mr. Kumar said that a conspicuous sign of the improvement in water quality along the Ganga was the rise in dolphin population from 20,000 to about 40,000. From 2000 to about 4,000. We are also seeing the presence of dolphin in new stretches of the river as well as in tributaries of the Ganga. Fishermen are also reporting the increased presence of Indian carp, a fish species that only thrive in clean water. So we have nature's verdict on river improvement, he added. The typical parameter used by the Central Pollution Control Board, such as the levels of dissolved oxygen, biochemical oxygen demand, and fecal coliform, vary widely along various stretches of the river. NMCG is now working to develop a water quality index on the lines of the air quality index to be able to better communication about river water quality, he added. The next जो important है NCERT given deemed to be university tag, says Pradhan. The National Council of Education Research and Training (NCERT) has been granted the deemed to be university status. Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan said on the 63rd Foundation Day of Apex Decision Making Body for School Education on Friday. NCERT on becoming a research university will offer opportunities for global collaboration and contribution to global education landscape, Mr. Pradhan said. The deemed to be university status is on lines of Indian Institute of Science, and he added, Mr. Pradhan said that Jadui Pitara, a play-based learning teaching material tailored for children in the age group of 3 to 8 years developed by the NCERT would benefit 10 crore children entering the play-based learning system in Anganwadis or pre-primary sections of schools leading up to class 2. As 80% of brain development occurs by the age of 8, we need to ensure that content is made and adapted to the mother tongue, otherwise it will be of little use, he said. Children from void from void marriage entitled to parents' share in the property, says Supreme Court. The Supreme Court on Friday held that a child born of a void or voidable void and voidable marriage can inherit their parents' share in a joint Hindu family property governed by the Mithaq Mitaksara law. A three-judge bench headed by Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud, however, clarified that such a child would not be entitled to rights in or to property or of any other person in the family. A voidable marriage is one that is made inavailable. Sorry, a voidable marriage is one that is made invalid by the husband or the wife through a decree. A void marriage is invalid at its very inception. The Mitaka Sahara law of succession governing Hindu undivided families applies to the whole of India, except West Bengal and Assam. Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud said that the first step to inheritance for a child from a void or voidable marriage would be to ascertain their parents' exact share in the ancestral property, national participation, national partition. Sorry. This could be done by means of conducting a national partition of the ancestral property and calculating how much of the property the parent would have got immediately before their death. For the purpose of ascertaining the interest of deceased Hindu Mithak Sahara Uparsenar, that is a person who acquires a legal right to his ancestral property through birth in a Hindu undivided family. The law mandates the assumption of a state of affairs immediately prior to the death of the Uparsenar, namely a partition the Uparsenary property between the deceased and the other members of the Uparsenary. Chief Justice who authored the judgment observed, when the share of the deceased in the property that would be allotted to him if a partition had taken place immediately before his death is ascertained, his heirs, including children who have been conferred with legitimacy, will be entitled to their share in the property which would have been allotted to the deceased on the national partition. The Chief Justice held governing inheritance. The Chief Justice said that Section 16 of the Hindu Marriage Act has statutorily conferred legitimacy to children born out of void or voidable marriages. He also pointed out that Section 16 Clause 3 of the Act stipulates that children from void and voidable marriage would have a right to their parents' property. The court said that The intent of granting legitimacy to such children in the Hindu Marriage Act should also be reflected in the Hindu Succession Act, which governs inheritance. Children from void or voidable marriage come within the ambit of legitimate kinship and cannot be regarded as illegitimate by the Hindu Succession Act. When it comes to inheritance, it is also noted that after the enactment of the Hindu Succession Amendment Act of 2005, the share of a deceased person in a joint Hindu family governed by Mitaka Sara law can be developed to his heirs by testamentary or intestate succession. Prior to the amendment, the devolution was only brought survivorship. Beside, the amendment gave equal rights of succession to women as well as men. Then जो लास्ट आर्टिकल है आज का, थाईलैंड किंग reduces former PM Thakinsin's prison term to 1 year. The 75-year-old billionaire who had returned from a 15-year-long exile had applied for royal pardon over graft and abuse of office conviction. He was sent to jail last week immediately upon his return to the kingdom for the first time since 2008. Thailand's jailed former premier Thaksin Shinawatra had his prison sentence cut from 8 years to one by the king on Friday, just days after he returned from a decade and a half in exile. The move came a day after the billionaire ex-prime minister 74 applied for a royal pardon over graft and abuse of office conviction amid widespread speculation about a backroom deal to allow him clemency. On pleasant start, Mr. Thaksin, twice elected prime minister and out, ousted in a 2006 military coup, was sent to prison last week immediately after returning to the kingdom for the first time since 2008. The partial pardon from King Maha Vajiralongkorn was confirmed by the official Royal Gazette with the announcement pointing to his service to the country as Prime Minister. He is loyal to the institution of monarchy. When prosecuted, he respected the justice system, the statement said, noting that Mr. Thaksin also suffers numerous health problems. His Majesty the King has granted him amnesty and reduced the sentence of Thaksin Shinawatra, the prisoner, to 1 year in prison so that he could use his expertise and experience to develop the country further. His homecoming on Tuesday last week coincided with his few Thai party returning to government in alliance with the pro-military parties, leading many to conclude that an agreement had been struck to cut his jail time. I congratulate Thaksin's family for the new Prime Minister Setha Thavisin of few Thai told reporters. His family must be happy. I heard he suffers from high blood pressure. They must be at ease. Divisive figures. Former telecom Former telecoms tycoon and Manchester city owner Mr. Thaksin is one of the most influential but divisive figure in the modern Thai history. Loved by millions of rural Thais for his populist policies in the early 2000s, he has long been reviled by the country's royalist and pro-military establishment. Much of Thai policies over the last 2 decades has been colored by the establishment of efforts to keep Mr. Thaksin and his allies out of power. Hero's welcome. His supporters gave him a hero's welcome on landing in Bangkok, and his first public act was to prostrate himself in homage before a portrait of the king at the airport. Hours later, Mr. Thavisin was confirmed as Prime Minister, the party's first premier since Mr. Thaksin's sister Wingluck was thrown out in a coup in 2014. On his first night back in Thailand, Mr. Thaksin was moved from jail to a police hospital with prison medical officers saying he needed close monitoring for various health problems including heart troubles. So with this we will conclude for today, and we will continue from tomorrow onwards with the important articles from the Hindu newspaper. So thank you everyone.